No role plays, no conference calls, no BS. Chris and Lorenzo share 4 decades of combined experience to help you become a more effective leader. This is Hacking Your Leadership.
Welcome to Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Chris.
And I'm Lorenzo.
And Lorenzo, welcome to Holiday Hack number 2. For those of you who did not listen on Thanksgiving, or if you hadn't listened to that episode yet, this is the second episode in our 13 holiday hacks that we're doing for the holiday season, in spirit of trying to not ask for as much time from our listeners in longer episodes. These episodes are all somewhere between 10 and 12 minutes long, and we're going to be talking about the top 13 videos on YouTube as curated by research by us and Google and AI on the videos that Gen Z leaders and aspiring leaders are watching the most right now. And this makes a lot of sense. There are a lot of people in Gen Z who are in entry-level leadership roles at the beginning of their career, and there are a lot of people in Gen Z who are trying to move up into leadership roles. And so these videos will be talking about the things that this generation is listening to. If you are a Gen Z leader or if you're leading people in Gen Z, these are worth watching. Last week, we talked about the Give and Take by Adam Grant. On this holiday hack, we're going to be talking about a video by John Addison called Retail Leadership. It's a short video, but I think it has a lot of really interesting things to discuss around the role of a leader and the responsibility of a leader.
Yeah, I really like this video. And again, it's a couple of minutes only. But I think it is it's really great at kind of landing a really, really clear message here, specifically around kind of like focus. And for me, the general idea of like where you are as a leader and the way that you show up as a leader, the tone that you set as a leader is exactly what kind of cascades and resonates with your team. They become reflections of that. And I really like that idea.
Yeah, he starts out talking about authenticity and how it's important to be authentic if you're a leader. And then he also talks about how a leader should consider themselves always on stage. And I want to dive into this part of it because there's an inherent kind of conflict in those two things to me. Like to me, if I'm a leader and I'm always on stage, which I agree with, I do think leaders are always on stage when they're in the presence of peers and their boss and most importantly, the people reporting to them. But there have been times as a leader of people where I have been less than authentic because I believed that if I either said what I was truly feeling at the moment, that it would not lead my people to believe that I was focused on whatever the right thing was at the time. Sometimes leaders, I think, do have to tone it down or to, kind of think about what the broader implications are of what they're about to say in a way that says, maybe what I want to say right here is correct, but it doesn't necessarily bring about the best results. So let's say it a different way. And that's kind of the concept of being always on stage. Do you think that kind of conflicts with the idea of authenticity, or you think it's you can do both?
I think it's such a great point, man. Like, I'm so glad that we're talking about this because it is by definition, if you're considering the way that you're going to respond or what you're going to say, and you're adjusting that in front of people because of the audience, then I don't think that you can say you're being fully authentic. You're being responsible.
Sure.
Sure. Like there are those moments where I hear something or somebody asks a question or there's something that's happening or that, where I know I'm in front of an audience of people and I'm their leader. And my visceral reaction is one that I would be like, what is going on right now? But I also know that if I do that, that there's the potential that they may feel that, and then if they're like, oh no, like he is like he's feeling a certain way about this, then I definitely should feel a certain way about that, right? Mm-hmm. So I love that we're talking about it because I think that over time, there's a part, I think, of leadership development in my own personal development where that decision has to be made very quickly. And there are times when I absolutely will go unfiltered on how I feel about something, because I think that, to your point, I think it's important that people see that they know that, like, if I'm like, well, that sounds ridiculous. You know, like where if you say you're always on stage and you hear strategy that's being kind of, discussed or socialized, as a leader, you should say, I think that's a good idea. Let me think more about that. Like, there's ways to do that allow you to take the time to absorb it, consider it, and then be able to explain it. But sometimes you just need to say that's ridiculous. But like, let me think about why we're here or why we're considering this. Because I also think that it's important that if you're going to be authentic, that your people see you match the emotion of the situation. And what I mean by that is, like, if something happens that is absolutely like the wrong thing, or it's like you're in a meeting and somebody disrespects the person in the meeting, there's the way of a leader saying, okay, well, let's hold on, let's pause for a second, everyone, let's take a break here. Clearly there's some emotion of the room. Or as leader, I can say, Chris, let me be super clear. That level of disrespect is not going to be handled in this room. And if I ever hear that again, I will terminate your employment.
Yes.
Now we're going to take a 5-minute break.
Yep.
Right? And I'd like for you to stay behind.
Yeah.
Right? Two different things. One, you could say, that sounds a little bit more, kind of appropriate for the room, and you don't want to punish in public. And the other one says, no, sometimes you have to punish in public. Right? So, like, I love that we're having that dialogue.
Yeah, I think when people say that they want their leader to be authentic, it's interesting because they're not actually saying they want the leader to be who they are for real. What they're saying is they know how they would react or respond to something. And because they think that that is the right way, they project that onto other people. And if other people don't react in the same way that they would react, that person actually is perceived as inauthentic. So there can be times when you change the way that you would respond from what you actually feel to what you believe the room is feeling to match that will lead you to come off as more authentic, even if it's not really how you would respond in the moment. And that's a great example of that. There's a comedian once who said that, he was with a person who took a bite of a sandwich and the response was, "Oh my gosh, this sandwich is unbelievably amazing." And he said, if those are the words you're going to use to describe a sandwich, what would you use to describe aliens landing? Right? Like what's left if the sandwich is unbelievably amazing? And I think we have a tendency to do that. We have a tendency to try to, to go to the most extreme of whatever it is to try to convey how we feel about something. And that can lead us to have kind of nothing left. So if you're a leader and you are, I don't want to say level-headed, but if you are consistent in terms of your responses for things, and you're viewed as the person who is kind of over the top or extreme, that could be, how you're viewed as authentic. But then what's left if all of a sudden something genuinely requires that level of emotion or response, and you have nothing left on top of what your baseline is? That could lead you to seem like you are almost not treating the situation with the gravity that it deserves because you're not going above whatever your baseline is. The next thing he talks about in the video is around how the job of a leader is to transfer confidence to unconfident people. So I want to talk about that, but first I want to give it toward one of our sponsors. All right, Lorenzo, according to John Addison, one of the jobs of a leader is to transfer confidence to unconfident people. And I like this because I don't look at everybody as being wholly unconfident, but there are some pretty confident people I know who, in the certain circumstances, they don't come off as confident because they're either new to the situation or they're kind of fish out of water for the moment because they haven't learned the ins and outs of whatever they've been asked to do. And this idea of transferring confidence to people is it's crucial because that's what allows people to kind of rise and to meet the standards that you can impose on them, as opposed to only being worried about I don't have the skills needed to be able to do this. If they feel they have the skills, sometimes, it's the old adage, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. If you're a leader and you can instill confidence in unconfident people, oftentimes that can be the difference between them succeeding or not, is just thinking that they're going to.
I love kind of the idea and like the true belief that I believe that as a leader, inspiring people, motivating people, being focused on what's going on is absolutely critical to giving them the space to truly be successful. I was having a conversation over the last couple of weeks around inspiring people in leadership, and then being really conscious of how are you defining like success. So like what you were saying earlier about like language. So if I was to say to you, hey, Chris, this individual is struggling with their job,
Yep.
right? immediately I would probably imagine you'd say, wow, that probably means they're not doing the minimum expectation.
Yep.
It means that they're probably being held accountable because like their outcomes are completely unacceptable, right? Like it probably means that like they don't have the skill or the competence to be successful. Like there's a lot of things that you hear or in your own head when you hear the word somebody is struggling, okay? But there's a difference between somebody struggling to get the job done and then somebody maybe struggling to get from good to great.
Sure.
Or from really good to great, right? But sometimes we use the same language to explain both. So if I say, oh yeah, Chris is struggling, well, what do you mean? Well, Chris is doing the apps, like Chris is above the average at every single thing that he's doing. We've asked him for more. We've expanded his scope. We've given him some more opportunities and responsibilities, and he's struggling to manage those. Mm-hmm. And I would say, okay, by definition of the word, I could see what you're saying there, but should Chris feel like he's struggling if he's meeting the expectations of the job and he's delivering better than average performance in whatever he's responsible for? Because he may be struggling to level up, he may be struggling to refine the skills, but Chris should feel inspired and motivated and believed in to say, hey, Chris, I want to be really clear. You're doing phenomenal work and you're doing a really good job and you're really, consistent in what you're doing. I know that you're looking for more. I know that we're asking for more. I know that we're assigning more and I actually expect you to struggle a little bit. I expect this. I expect you to have to learn some of these things as you go because this is new territory in a different way. And that's okay. So we're going to work together to break through some of these things. That's a very different conversation than for me to sit down with Chris and say, hey, I'm looking at these outcomes and things that you're working on, and I think that you're struggling.
Yeah.
Right? So again, the ability to inspire people, to motivate people, to be focused on what are you trying to do with them as your leader. If I'm trying to help them, get from good to great, I need to be really focused on even how I talk about that, how I position that, and how I explain that to them while they're doing harder work and where they may be not having the success that they want.
Right. It's like you ever see CNBC or something talks about how, today this stock plummeted, and you look at the chart and it's like it dropped like 0.3%, but because it happened in a 5-minute period, it's like they use the word plummeted. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, should I get out of this position right now? And it's like, wait, no, like it's this the extreme words. Or when you see like a sports commentator talk about someone who is at the top of their game and they go like, there's nothing left to say, they just choked, and it's like, well, yeah, they it's a sprinter who came in 2/100ths short of a personal best and 4th place in the race, and it's like, well, they just choked. It's like, really? They're like the 5th best in the world and they choked.
Yeah. They lost the Super Bowl.
They lost the Super Bowl. They lost the Super Bowl. Yeah, but they're in the Super Bowl. Yeah. So you're completely right. The verbiage matters, and when you hear these things as a person who's not among whatever that group is, if it sounds inherently like that doesn't seem like the right word there. Believe me, it happens everywhere, not just in those extreme examples. It happens in the example that you gave around an employee who you might describe as struggling. And if you're talking about the idea of leaders being focused, I think what that really means is it all comes back to that focus. So if a leader's job is to be the most focused person on the team, what that does is it allows them to take a step back and really decide moment by moment, what is their role in this situation? Sometimes it's saying nothing at all, and sometimes it's getting involved in a very level-headed way, and sometimes it's bringing an emotional component to the situation because that's what it calls for. And if you want to be a successful leader, you have to be able to measure those things in the moment and respond accordingly, and not make too many mistakes in that. You can make some, and you will get grace for it, but you have to kind of read the room every moment. And I think that's what John Addison means when he talks about the biggest job of a leader is to be the most focused person in the room.
Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to the end of this episode. This is Hacking Leadership. I'm Lorenzo.
And I'm Chris.
And have a great day.